Robert Abela says he wants to remove all COVID-19 restrictions. Air Malta to get rid of half of its workforce. Man accused of murdering partner holds Maltese TV show interviewing victim's mother. All this and more on Lovin Daily. Good evening and welcome to another edition of Lovin Daily. I'm Tim Diacono, joined today by Yannick Paj. And in this episode, we're going to be speaking to Marama Corlett, an actress, quite a well-known actress who's taking part in Lovin Malta's latest documentary, Belt Capitali, which is all about the changing face of Malta's capital city, Valletta. The first installment, powered by Cisca and eCabs, will be launching tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. on all Lovin Malta's platforms, so make sure you check it out. But until we get there, we're going to discuss some of the big stories of today, the biggest of which is the major controversy of the week, which is the vaccine certificate issue about these new rules that are going to be coming into force on Monday. We spoke to the Prime Minister this morning to get his opinion on these new rules. Yeah, what can you tell us about it?
So Prime Minister Robert Abela this morning said, I guess what most of us are thinking, that basically he would like all COVID measures to be removed. But he said the health authorities were advising against it. Prime Minister said, if it were up to him, he's the first one that really wants to shift from a state of quasi-normal to normal. But he said that at this stage, the health authorities were still advising against this. In fact, he noted that even Doctors' Union had said that until there is 85% of the population which has received the COVID booster, that all measures should remain in place, including the requirement for a vaccine certificate for one to enter most establishments. He also took a dig at Nationalist MP Bernard Grech, who earlier this week urged government to scrap the vaccine requirement as well as to shorten the quarantine period. He basically accused the leader of the opposition of jumping on the populist trend, he said, and changing his mind on the PN's position on COVID. Greg's position has received quite a bit of traction online. In fact, many people are now starting to question whether the present strict measures are still justified given the direction the pandemic seems to be heading into. But for the time being, government said the measures will remain in place for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and obviously the Prime Minister has been burned before by talking a big game about the pandemics, promising things prematurely, and then having been forced into a U-turn. And now it seems that he's given full Chris Fair and his minister full control over everything COVID related. The problem over there is that it risks coming off as weak. That you're in charge of the country and you're letting your minister just dictate your own policies for you. And the Nationalist Party's new stance against these certificates, I really believe it could be a game changer, seeing as we've never had, throughout this pandemic, any kind of political opposition to rules imposed by the health authorities. Always been the impression that they know what they're doing, even when it's just quite clear that they didn't. And it will be interesting to see if they'll keep it up, they'll keep up the pressure and start ramping it up to try and get these rules removed. So yes, the rules are going to be coming in place on Monday as it stands. Moving on, Finance Minister Clyde Caruana gave a really brutal press conference this afternoon in which he confirmed that Air Malta is going to be transferring half of its entire workforce in an attempt to survive. So in his usual fashion, Clyde Caruana didn't mince his words, saying, really calling out his political predecessors for prioritizing politics over common sense at the airline, giving the impression that Air Malta is a place that they're offering jobs not because the airline needed them, but because they wanted to please certain constituents. And he said, look, this is what got us into the state we're in today. The European Commission doesn't trust us anymore. They wanted us Air Malta to go to Air Valitalia, which means fold and reinvent itself into another company. We still believe that Malta can survive, but it's not going to be easy, and tough decisions need to be taken. He said 8 Malta employs 890 people, which is a lot for a very small airline, and this is going to be scheduled to around 420 people. These workers are not going to end up unemployed. They will be transferred to other government departments, but Air Malta simply cannot deal with the load. He also criticized plans to open new routes to faraway destinations from Malta to, for example, Mumbai, to New York. This was actually something that was being actively discussed a few years ago. So if you're looking forward to these routes, as I was, forget it. It's not happening. What did you make of the press conference?
I mean, to be fair, I don't think the flights to Mumbai were ever really feasible. I think it was just something said to get people excited, but was never really too feasible. As regards Malta, I think the minister is right in that for years now, political considerations have probably dominated decision making at the airline. As we know, the government has applied for state aid from the European Commission, so presumably this will go a long way into sort of proving to them that the state aid will turn the airline around and not see it need further assistance down the line. It's obviously very difficult for the employees that are affected, but one hopes that if such drastic action is being taken, that at the very least the airline will start to make its way back to its former glory. On to our next story, the courts have temporarily banned an interview with the mother of Chantal Ketkouti, a woman who was stabbed to death by her partner 2 years ago. Basically, the interview was due to air yesterday on 1TV Zawla, but was banned by a court after Justin Borch, the man accused of murdering Ketkouti, filed an urgent request in which he claimed that, given one's large reach and Aula's large viewership, that potential jurors might see this interview and be influenced against him. Now, just as a reminder, the incident was quite a shocking one. She was stabbed outside a bar in Zabar, received multiple stab wounds, and Borch himself even went to the police and turned himself in. There was widespread coverage of the case. So it's hard to understand exactly how this particular interview is going to influence jurors more than all the other coverage. That said, the court accepted temporarily the request and scheduled a sitting for next week when a decision will be handed down, presumably on whether this interview will be banned for good. The move has obviously been criticized by many, especially women's rights activists, who have pointed out that not only has this woman had to deal with the trauma of losing a daughter in such a brutal way, that she's now being silenced and prevented from freely expressing herself as she should be in a democratic society. Thoughts?
Thoughts are that if the logic applied by Mr. Borja apply across the board, it means that no one will be allowed to speak or comment on ongoing court cases. That will also mean that people like Matthew Carnegalizia can't even speak about his mother's murder, that people can comment on the murder of Paulina Demska, which of course goes against all principles of free speech, and I seriously hope that the courts apply rules of common sense and allow this interview to go ahead. Like you rightly said, Chantal Ketkouti's mother has suffered enough, and if she's ready to speak, she should definitely be allowed to speak. Moving on, an interesting scheme was launched this morning to address people who cannot afford to enter the housing market, because property, as we all know, has become extremely expensive, but who aren't eligible for social housing, which are for people on very low incomes. And so the full details of the scheme will be announced in due course, but on the face of it, it's a social venture between the government and the Archdiocese, the Church of Malta, and the church will lease out some land, a convent in Kirkop, for 25 years. It will be converted into housing units, and it will be rented out to to families, to people at a price below the market value. So there will be some means testing, obviously, to make sure that you do fall into the category of people that they are looking to tap into. The government will fund this foundation €300,000 a year for the next 25 years, and the hope is that eventually, with more projects coming in, more income coming in from rent, it will become self-sustainable. I'm interested to see the way this goes, especially, I mean, at the beginning, you're not going to really feel it much. It's just a couple of housing units here and there. But if it starts picking up and gaining ground, and more people start, being interested in it, and if it even starts expanding beyond the original categories, I feel it could even impact the market, right? So if, for example, they're saying that an apartment is worth, for example, €400 a month, and the original market value for a similar property is 800 a month, it's a no-brainer which one people will go for. So it could have a downward impact on the market, which I think would be a positive development, because they have become too expensive.
It is. I mean, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. There's two sides to the coin. Because obviously, while it's more expensive for people to enter the market, the 85% or so of Maltese people who are homeowners effectively have seen their assets kind of increase with the rise.
It's not going to make a difference, though.
With the rise in property prices. No, I think this is a solution to a problem which obviously a segment of the population is facing, and which needs addressing. It remains to be seen whether it will have an impact in the long term, whether there will be enough of these units to actually satisfy the growing demand for property. Onto our final story. A waitress who was fired for refusing to serve a slice of cheesecake to a client has been awarded €5,000 in compensation after a court decided that she had been unfairly dismissed. So the issue, the waitress, Giulia Gattuccio, was fired by Suda Entertainment Limited, which manages Pepe Nero, after she refused to serve a slice of cheesecake to a client after it had been left out for about 2 hours. It seems that the management insisted with her that she served the cheesecake, but refused to. She was forced to apologize and eventually stopped being added to the roster and was fired. Her manager claimed that there were other issues that contributed to her being fired. However, the court clearly did not agree and awarded her €5,000 compensation. It's good to see that a waiter somewhere in a kitchen might be looking out for your health and refusing to serve you bad food.
Yeah, it also makes me wonder sometimes, unfortunately, like how many don't as well.
Yes.
I'm a fan of cheesecake in particular, so it did raise my eyebrows in that extent. That's it from us today. We're now going to cut to a clip of a trailer of the documentary Belt Capitali featuring Marama Corlett. And when we get back, we're going to be interviewing Marama Corlett herself. So stay around in just a few moments.
Seta stretta jien trabbejt hemmhekk ukoll. Naf il-ħajja ta' seta stretta kif kienet. Kienet trabbija sabiħa però.
Jien il-belt baqajt imħobba. Jekk niġi nagħmel nofstanar, irrida li nidħol kull jum il-belt.
Kien jiġi tar-Rizzi, hija tar-Rizzi, Rizzi ġibni.
Qabel kont tismaħu li daħħan idħol sal-belt, illum m'għadek tismaħu li.
Gburi, nina belti.
Welcome back to Lovin Daily. With me now is Marama Corlett.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, Marama. You've worked on some pretty big films and TV series in the past, including Sick Note, including Guardians of the Galaxy. But you were born and raised in Malta. So for
Yes.
those who may not know who you are, can you explain who is Marama Corlett?
I'm Maltese. I grew up here. My father's from New Zealand, actually. And like you say, I've been doing acting for a number of years now. And at some point I left Malta and went to study in London, did classical ballet, which then led me to acting, which was something I wasn't really planning, it sort of happened. And yeah, then I've been working as a professional actor for the past 10 years now.
What do you love about it?
I guess the people you meet, the constant changes, it's not always the same. You get to travel a lot, and yeah, I do love that a lot.
So, Belt Capitali, it's a documentary about Malta's own capital city, Valletta. So what can you tell us about it? It's going to be launching tomorrow.
Yes, I'm really excited. So I've known David Grech, who's your head of content here, for many years. We've been friends and we've always wanted to collaborate together. And this opportunity came up to make a mini documentary about Valletta. For those people who maybe follow me on Instagram, I'm absolutely in love with the elderly, especially the ones who live in Valletta, and sort of capture them in their element. And we came up with this idea of highlighting some of the characters of Valletta at this time, you know, for this video to stay with us for a long time, you know.
So who are some of these characters who you met during this making this documentary?
There's a few. We've got Bertu from Bertu's Takeaway in Valletta, Charlie, who has an ironmongery, Tabaraba Funeral Homes. There's all these exciting characters who have, a lot of them are in their 70s and 80s. So they've lived in Valletta for a very long time and have seen Valletta change so much from potentially, you know, it was abandoned, let's say, and now it's overly commercialized. And how do these people survive through that, and what are the things that they are faced with now? It's essentially a little love letter to Valletta by the Valletta people themselves, I think, which is really sweet.
So because there's been quite a bit of debate about this issue of Valletta and whether it has lost its soul and the soul of the past, you know, through all of these new establishments and nightlife inside it, or whether this has breathed new life into the city and made it a really vibrant capital city. What's your take on it, especially after speaking to people who have lived through all of these changes and in their everyday lives?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think it's very important that we find a balance somehow, you know, especially for these people who live in Valletta. Like you said earlier, you know, prices are going up for property, and a lot of these people who have lived there cannot afford the rent anymore and are being asked to leave and find other places to live. And it's very sad for people who are from Valletta who love the place and who make Valletta what it is, and it will be sad once these people aren't around anymore. So I would love for things to I don't know, somehow we can stabilize things for these people, that they can remain there. But yeah.
Will there be a second chapter?
I hope so. And I think maybe there are some plans too. There are lots more characters to see that, you know, so it will be a wonderful thing if we could capture some more people.
Absolutely, I think it's something that's it's going to be an amazing documentary. Again, it's going to be airing on Lovin Malta on all our platforms tomorrow, 10:30 a.m.
Yes, very exciting. And we've had a really great team. Obviously, people who work here at Lovin, and Andrea Orso, who co-directed with me as well, Bettina Falson and Keith the Mac, who is our editor. It's just been really wonderful. So Thank you so much.
So, Maram, I have to ask, you've worked with some extremely famous actors in the past. You've worked with the likes of Lindsay Lohan, Rupert Grint, who famously played Ron Weasley in the Harry Potter series, but you took part with and you took part with him in Sick Note, the TV series. Chris Pratt and Vin Diesel, Guardians of the Galaxy. So how are these people like in real life?
I mean, they're all different, obviously, but they're very much human as all of us. But obviously, it's always a wonderful thing to get to work with people who are in such high places in the film industry or the TV industry. But yeah, it's just wonderful. I really enjoy it, and I enjoy meeting all these characters.
Were you starstruck by them?
Sometimes, definitely. Like, don't know, Angelina Jolie. When I met her, I was pretty starstruck. But other people are just, normally you meet them and you just feel like you've known them for years somehow.
Mm-hmm. So, but when with this taste of celebrity life, let's put it this way, would you say it's really as glamorous as it sounds, or as sometimes we have the impression that it is, or is a lot of all of that just for the cameras?
I guess there's so much to it. When you're working, you have 14-hour days. Sometimes you wake up at 3 a.m. in the morning and you leave set at, I don't know, crazy hours. It's very tiring, although it's a lot of fun. So there is, the real work that comes into it. But then there's also the fun,
Like what?
Getting invited to premieres and parties and meeting people.
Did you did you speak to Rupert Grint about Harry Potter in any way?
To be honest, I wasn't even a fan of Harry Potter. It's really embarrassing to say. But he is the most wonderful person. He's a sweetheart, and he's no bother to anyone. When they say cut, he does his work, and then he's quite in his own little space. He's a wonderful person, and I was very happy to work with him.
It's great to hear. So, do you have any interesting projects coming up? What's next for you?
There are a couple of things that I'm working on at the moment, but they're still under wraps, so that I'm sure Lovin will be the first to know when I can talk about it.
And finally, in an ideal world, what's your big dream?
I guess to continue working as I am and building my portfolio, and also doing bigger projects here in Malta. I'd love to do that.
That's great. That's great to hear, especially after with all the experience you've gained overseas, working with some major players in the global film industry. Marama Corlett, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
Again, looking forward to watching Bel Capitali tomorrow morning on Lovin Malta at 10:30 a.m. And I hope we hear, I'm sure we're going to hear quite a lot from you in the near future as well. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for following us today. Make sure you keep following lovinmalta.com for all the latest happenings, and have an evening full of lovin'.